Democrats have hired a consultant in reputational restoration to help them bring their party back from the political wilderness into which it was recently tossed, like an empty big gulp cup thrown from the window of a speedy 1987 Chevy Camaro. The reputational restoration expert is named Vladimir Impalye. His pronouns are woo and who, and woo identifies as a questioning, non-binary demigirl with sidelines in interior design and sensual massage. Legrand Impalye, as he's known to his friend, was most recently employed to engineer Meghan Markle's comeback, as well as to secure the Kansas City Chiefs' legacy with a third straight Super Bowl win, which he arranged by replacing the Chiefs' offensive line with store mannequins so there'd be more men free to serve as downfield receivers for the late Patrick Mahomes. The DailyWire arranged an exclusive interview with Impalye at whose private recreational vehicle during the final hour of overnight free parking outside Baltimore's famous Hustler Club. Speaking through a fragrant cloud of marijuana smoke laced with the stimulating scent of oh-so-adorable perfume for tweens, the reputation master told us, quote, "I don't like to brag, but yes, it was I who orchestrated the Democrats' reaction to Donald Trump's recent speech to Congress. Notice how I had all the women dress in pink because, well, I love pink, so it served as a personal expression of my unique inner reality. Indeed, I wanted to have the Democrat men dress in pink as well, but they refused because they thought it would make them look like a bunch of queers, which, strictly entre nous, would not be entirely inapropos, but say no more. My next masterstroke was to equip the Democrats with these absolutely adorable little signs on which were inscribed cute candy heart-style messages that would convey their very stern disapproval of Mr. Grumpy Trumpy's plan to make America great again, like the boorish yet strangely alluring brute that he is. Though I say so myself, I thought it was an especially elegant touch to make the messages on the signs so small that the audience had to lean in very close to read them, which would reveal just how very deeply they care about what Democrats have to say. Nobody actually did lean in to read them, of course, but nonetheless, the potential effect was very powerful until it was spoiled by that peculiar little man with the walking stick who kept shouting who knows what until he was removed from the chamber. Thank God, since he was absolutely ruining my otherwise fabulous tableau. Finally, it was I who came up with the inspiration to have the Democrats keep their seats and refuse to applaud, even when Trump was announcing a secure border or new businesses coming into the country or the strengthening of our police and military. The most delicious moment was when some depressing little boy with cancer who wanted to be a police officer or some such thing had his dreams fulfilled by being accepted into the Secret Service. Everyone else in America was crying and applauding and carrying on, but I had the Democrats just sit there stony-faced to prove that they would not give in to some craven desire to win voter approval by expressing kindness or humanity or common decency. By following my expert advice, the Democrats showed the world that they're not just people waving unreadable little signs while dressed in pink for some reason. No, these are men and women of principle who will never abandon their pretense of being morally superior to the countrymen they despise, but are dedicated to destroying everything of value those countrymen built through blood and toil over the course of centuries. I don't know how America cannot be moved by such a show of commitment." Unquote. Impalye says Wu will continue to guide the Democrats' reputational comeback by hiring as many as 10 or 15 people to show up at their protests, where they'll chant such inspirational slogans as, "What do we want? Fraud. When do we want it? Now." Unless the protest is being led by Maxine Waters, in which case there'll just be a lot of incomprehensible raven-like squawking, and the protesters will be paid time and a half. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we are back laughing our way through laughing and even more laughing and more laughing after that. I have to say one word about that satire, which the more attentive in the audience will have noticed was a small work of genius. And I'm not just saying that to brag or, hoping that you'll send me some money, though obviously any decent human being could do no less. But I just wanted to make an actually half serious point about art itself, because we're going to be talking a little bit about art as we move forward through the news. And I wrote that piece in the Nashville airport at 6 a.m. on Wednesday. First draft, and I was rewriting it throughout the day, but the piece was pretty much constructed 6 a.m. in the airport on Wednesday. And I read it and I thought, wow, good job, Clave. Nice. That's a really particularly good one. 24 hours later, Thursday at 6 o'clock, I wake at 6 in the morning. I wake up and I read the news from our friends at Fox News that the Democrat Party has hired an executive named Roger Lau, who is now going to sort of help run the Democrat Party and sort of restore Democrats' fortunes. And Lau is a guy who signed a letter that said, our country was built on the foundation of racism, ranging from the genocide of indigenous people, chattel slavery, racial profiling of young men of color, and a criminal justice system that tears families apart. And he also supported Black Lives Matter, and he opposed a resolution condemning the Chinese Communist Party for releasing COVID. And he was just the other day in the video supporting the mayor of Boston when she offered her condolences to the family of the knife-wielding maniac who was shot by the police, not to the police, but to this maniac. So in other words, this satire, which I could feel the minute I wrote it, was right on the button, was actually a small work of art, actually predicted the future 24 hours later. They actually hired the exact guy I was talking about. Now, remember that as I go on talking, because it's something important about the arts, and we will get back to it. And meanwhile, with Roger Lau in charge of the Democrats, I think we can safely say this.
We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We're going to win economically. We're going to win with the economy. We're going to win with military. We're going to win with healthcare and for our veterans. We're going to win with every single facet.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. Yay! You'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
Yay! All right. Speaking of art, do not forget to go out and pre-order The Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness, my new book, which comes out in May. Please pre-order. Pre-ordering, for reasons that are too boring to go into, is very important in publishing now. So if you pre-order it on Amazon, it helps me out a lot. But if you like the show, you will love this book. No one else, I can say safely without being arrogant, I can say no one else on earth could have written it. You won't hear what you hear in it from anywhere else. And it is really an interesting book about several real-life and how they worked their way in the arts and what the arts revealed about those. Kingdom of Cain, Finding God in the Literature of Darkness. Please go out and pre-order. It'll be very helpful, and you will want to read it, I promise. Also, leave a comment, and if the comment is morally reprehensible, if it's racist, if it has undertones of just hatred and, sexism and things like that, we will read it on the air because that's what we're here to do. Today's comment is from Michael Zwiderveen, 4084. He says, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 7 times. It must be Darth Klavan and the Trump happiness montage." Yeah, we're done with the Trump happiness montage. Never reading it, never playing it again. You will see. We'll get through this entire show. We won't play it once, so we'll just move on right away to today's episode from Woke to Awake. Listen, when I do this podcast, I'm an open book, but at home, I value my privacy because I'm not wearing any clothes. There's nothing worse than realizing your neighbors can see right into your living room while you're doing a pagan dance in your underwear. Right? They can see right in because your old blinds don't quite do the job anymore. After all, it's 2025 and your blinds might be still from 2005. That's why I'm excited about 3-Day Blinds. They're the leading manufacturer of custom window treatments in the U.S., and they make the whole process ridiculously easy. You can do all the shopping right from the comfort of your home. And right now, if you use my URL, 3dayblinds.com/Klavan, they are running a buy one, get one 50% off deal. Their design consultants have over 10 years of experience and come right to your home with thousands of samples. No more guessing what your blinds will look like. And the best part, they handle everything: design, measuring, installation. Plus, they can even set you up with smart blinds that connect to your home automation system. After helping over 2 million people get their dream window treatments in the past 45 years, they definitely know what they're doing. Right now, get quality window treatments that fit your your budget with 3-Day Blinds. Head to 3dayblinds.com/Klavan for their buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery. For a free, no charge, no obligation consultation, just head to 3dayblinds.com/Klavan. That's buy one, get one 50% off when you head to the number 3, DAY, blinds.com/ how do you spell it? KLAVAN. Chapter 1, Snapshots versus Movies. Now, one of the reasons we're going to be talking about the arts today, especially the movies, is because one of the things I actually try to do on the show, being an artist and novelist, is I try to get people to see things as an artist would see them, instead of what most commentators do is get you to see things as a conservative or somebody with a philosophy would see them. Because philosophy is a snapshot. It actually takes life and turns life into words, into things that can't move, into a box almost that keeps you inside it. And when things don't fit in that box, it makes you angry. And when people step outside that box for a minute to explore other ideas, you think they've betrayed you, or you think they're doing something evil and you get suspicious, or you think they failed in some way. But artists understand that we're in a movie. They believe in flow. They live in art. A good artist lives in flow, things that are in motion, which gives you a certain sense of patience and tranquility as you wait to see what's going to happen next. You never take any moment as the final moment. You're always looking at things moving along. So people write to me sometimes and they say, "You said this or that. I'm never listening to you again." You know, I get this not as often as I used to, because I think all those people are gone now. But still, I get these things almost every week. Somebody's saying, "You said so-and-so, and that I'm never listening to again." And I always think, well, good, because having your philosophical snapshot challenged by the flow of art will actually make you happier and more peaceful. And I don't want you to be happier because you sound like a jerk. So even though I know that Trump's speech to the joint session of Congress, that essentially State of the Union after 40 days or whatever it is of the Trump presidency, I know everybody's been talking about it. Everybody's been examining it and all this stuff. I want to talk about it again because I think I have some fresh things to say. And I'm not going to play a million clips from it, but I want to just say what it is I saw in terms of the difference between flow and philosophy, the difference between movies and a snapshot. And I was on backstage with the guys, and I said the speech was absolutely extraordinary in its combativeness. Usually the president tries to get some kind of show of unity in his State of the Union, but the combativeness in this case was a reflection of Trump's very high-flying confidence in this moment, because Trump, in that way he has sensed something about the left's agenda and the state of the left. I don't know if he puts it into words in his own mind. I think he probably does, but he sees it, he smells it. And not just here, but in Europe too, the worldwide left. And he wants to use that as what he is, which is a showman. He wants to use it in an artistic way to perform it for people so they don't have to be able to actually know what they saw. They just understand. They just get it. That is the way art works. You walk out of a work of art and somehow you feel your perspective has changed, but you don't necessarily have to be able to say, well, the theme was this or the message was this. In fact, sometimes the artist doesn't feel he was writing about a theme or message. It's just like life. It's a work of art is an experience, and you come away knowing more than you do. So I'm just going to play a very few clips, probably about 2 clips. Let's just start with this first thing that he said almost at the very beginning of the speech to the Democrats, cut 2.
This is my 5th such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what.
So obviously, and other people have talked about this is great strategy, because now the Democrats are essentially stuck with their stupid little signs and their planned protests. And Al Green at Congress, the guy's ridiculous. He was shouting so much that Mike Johnson had to throw him out according to the rules of Congress. And later on, they actually censured Al Green. It was hard to hear what he was saying. So here's just a little bit of what he was shouting at the time. It's cut 3.
People say that I found a way to make you say that you love me. Hey, baby.
So I don't know. That didn't sound so bad to me, but they censured him for it. And luckily, the Democrats gathered around him and sang, "We shall overcome," because this was really an important moment in the history of freedom. But the Democrats sit there now and they can't stand it. They can't stand up or applaud because of this strategy. When Trump announces new businesses are pouring in, Honda's building a factory in Indiana, Stellantis, the car makers, are reopening their Dodge factory in Detroit, Taiwan semiconductor company, very important, making $100 billion investment here. Apple saying they're going to make $500 billion for 20,000 new jobs. He's announcing this, and the Democrats aren't applauding the terrorist who masterminded the Abbey Gate bombing. I'm not going to name him, but the terrorist who masterminded the Abbey Gate bombing that killed those Marines during Biden's disastrous retreat from Afghanistan, disgraceful retreat from Afghanistan. He was captured by some of the Tier 1 operatives working under the guidance of our friend Sebastian Gorka, who is now in charge of counterterrorism in the administration. And we actually have this, just because I know Gorka, he sent me a video of his interrogation of the terrorist, which was pretty tough. This is cut 12.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
See, Gorka is obviously a Bond villain, but he's our Bond villain. So I'm set. I'm glad we've set him loose on the bad guys. I'll talk about him a little bit more in the member block. And the Democrats keep sitting when Trump talks about his commitment to strengthen the military. The recruitment crisis is over because suddenly people aren't seeing these commercials like, you can join even if you're a transgender lesbian, so that all the men who kill people were like, yeah, I think I'll just go hunting. Thanks very much. And the Democrats booed for supporting the police, which is amazing. And then while this is happening, or right before the speech, Zelensky agreed to the rare mineral deal in Ukraine, which, by the way, see, that's a perfect example of how, remember the blow up in the Oval Office, and Vance and Trump and Zelensky were all shouting at each other. Everybody covered this like, oh my gosh, it's a disaster. That's covering it as a snapshot. But Trump, as we know, is living in it as a movie. It's the flow. He knows where it's going. It's going to the next place. And we told you what was going to happen. And in fact, that's what happened. Zelensky is caving in. And eventually, I think Trump is going to get a peace deal that may really help in separating Russia from China and bringing peace and allowing us to restore our troops, which is much more important than anything else we're doing around the world. And so that was the strategy, to keep them in their seats, so that even as he was announcing the amazing things he's done in merely 40 days, they couldn't stand up and applaud. But it was more than strategy. It was actually a performance. It was actually, call it a little movie or a little demonstration. It's saying to people in an experiential way, I don't want to say subconscious way, in an experiential way, we are not on the same team. This is not about bringing America together, because we are not compromising with the left because of compromise. I think it was Ayn Rand who said a compromise between a milkshake and crap is crap. You put a little bit of crap into a milkshake. It doesn't matter how much milkshake is there. It's still crap. So Trump is actually performing the fact that he's drawing a line. It is us against you. If you're not with us, you're against us. And by the way, this isn't actually about Republicans versus Democrats, because Democrats can be on Trump's side. It's about Americans against people who boo for American victories, who don't want America to be victorious, because like Roger Lau, now an executive in the Democrat Party, they believe this country was built on racism, was built on hatred, was built on killing indigenous people. And that's the heart of the country. So that forces now the liars in the press to admit that they don't represent America, because the polls show that Trump was right. Something like 75% of people liked this speech. And so the press is, oh my gosh, there are tariffs. That's the snapshot, because we don't know where Trump is going with the tariffs, and we don't know how that's going to end up. Oh, people are being fired in the government, and look, there's a tear on the cheek of a government worker's face as he carries his box of belongings out of his office. That's a snapshot. We think maybe, it's a good thing to uproot this cancer of bureaucracy from the government. That's what's happening in time. But none of the press is covering it. They're all covering these moments. They want you to get caught in their philosophical snapshot, because they are caught in a philosophical snapshot, and they cannot move with Trump. But the people can. People approve 75%. 75% approval ratings. You don't get for anything in America, except for me when I'm alone in a room by myself. But so it's not just a strategy, it's a performative line in the sand. And where is that line drawn? Trump tells us this is cut 4.
The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
Again, that's the line in the sand, that it's not about this or that. Let's just play the response, the Democrat response from Slotkin from the Caliphate of Michigan. And, she did a good job with the response. This is the most impossible job, but this is her responding to what Trump said about immigration and the border. We had the wonderful Tom Homan from Homeland Security on with Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh were in D.C. at the speech, and they sat down before with Tom Homan. I was kind of hoping Homan would give a demonstration of his trade by beating a confession out of Shapiro. I don't know what Shapiro has to confess, but I just thought it would make me laugh. I think that's the important thing. But let's listen to the Democrat response from Slotkin about that remark on immigration, cut 5.
Every country deserves to know who and what is coming across its border, period. Democrats and Republicans should all be for that. But securing the border without actually fixing our broken immigration system is dealing with the symptom and not the disease.
See, every word of that is false. We don't want to know who's coming across our border. We don't want them coming across our border. We do not want 11,000 people every 10 minutes coming across our border, because a country cannot survive that, as we're seeing in Britain, which is now becoming, obviously, a Muslim country. And so what she's saying is, we have to solve all the problems before we solve any of the problems, which is a typical Democrat technique, because they don't want to solve. They're lying. They're trying to act out their philosophy. And remember, philosophies are confining. Philosophies are life, moving, living, breathing life, packed into words and stagnant. That's why the truly greatest of philosophers, our founding philosophers, namely Socrates and Jesus, didn't actually philosophize. Socrates just asked questions, and Jesus told stories and lived out what he was trying to show us. And that's a very different thing. That's the difference between Jesus and theology, is one is alive and one is stagnant. You can't get out of it. So you ask yourself, if you're letting all these people in, start to ask yourself something else in terms of flow. Who do you serve? Who are you serving? You were elected by the American people. You're paid by the American people. You're an American official in government. Who do you serve by opening up the border? What is your possible excuse for that? How do you serve the people in your school district by putting in your schools? How do you justify that? You can't justify it in terms of service. You can't justify it. And you hired me to run things for you, and I'm not doing that. You can't justify it in terms of that. You can only justify it in terms of your philosophy. We're not doing anything for you by letting in terrorists and letting all these people in. We're doing something to preserve our philosophy, which is that we're all one world, and America is a bad place, and America is bad because it violates certain rules of us. There's that Bob Dylan song, you got to serve somebody. It might be the devil, it might be the Lord. So you wanted to find out, you wanted to see who the left is serving. You got it when that poor 13-year-old boy, I shouldn't call him that, he's a heroic 13-year-old boy, DJ Daniels. He's been battling brain cancer. I think he's had 13 operations on a 13-year-old boy. I may have the numbers, but it's multiple brain operations. And he dreamed about being in law enforcement. So Trump, during his speech, appointed him to the Secret Service. And people are saying this is just an honorary appointment, but he's actually already on the job. Here he is, cut 6.
Please stop being mean to President Trump, because if I see you being mean to him, I'm coming after you.
I love this kid. I hope he actually makes it into the Secret Service. It would give Trump more protection than he's had in the past. But the kid is moved. It's a beautiful moment. I mean, is it performative? Is it show business? Of course, but it's also real life. It's real life at the same time. The crowd goes wild. The kid is hugging people, and the Democrats just sit there. And everybody says, how could they? Right? You hear all these people, it's disgraceful. You can't find the right descriptive words to say how awful it is that they can't applaud. They say, no, it's bad strategy and all this, but it's not bad strategy. It's philosophy over life. It is having a philosophy, being so stuck inside that snapshot that you can't see the movie of who you've become. These people weren't born monsters. Democrats aren't. These people in Congress, They don't go home and beat their wives, not all of them. They call their mothers on Sundays. They weren't born monsters. They've made themselves monsters by trapping themselves in a bad idea. Trap yourself in any idea. Ultimately, you will become a monster. Some people say philosophy is biography. That is, your philosophy is really just expressing your nature, but that's only half true. In other words, when I say, well, my philosophy is this, a lot of times it just means this is the kind of person I am. And that's true of even famous philosophers, and even famous philosophers have said that about themselves, that my philosophy is really just my biography. But the thing is, you have a tendency toward believing certain things. But if you live in the flow, you change your mind. You change your mind when you start to see something's wrong. I mistreated somebody. I lived out my philosophy, but I mistreated somebody. I hurt somebody. I killed somebody. Maybe this philosophy has to change. If you freeze yourself in the snapshot, then when the flow takes you out of that snapshot and you don't go with it, you then become the philosophy that you have. That's when you lose your humanity. And again, this is why Jesus is always breaking the rules. He's always breaking the rules and saying, yes, we shouldn't violate, the Sabbath. Terrible thing to violate the Sabbath. Oh, but there's a guy who needs healing. I'm going to do that. And you go, well, wait, I thought we shouldn't violate the Sabbath. Yeah, I get it. But this is what human beings know, because human beings experience life as a movie, not as a snapshot. And if you become wise over time, you start to live into that flow. And this is why sometimes religious people get trapped in their beliefs and they don't do the things that Jesus was telling them to do. Sometimes you break the rules to make the rules live. So, we see this in history all the time. So the Democrats became what they are by following a false idea of truth, which is that they could reason their way to truth without tradition, without religion, without the things that go beyond what we can reason about, right? You can reason about this and that, but religion takes you up to another place where suddenly you have to act in time. That's why Jesus wants you to do charitable things. You go out and feed the poor or give money to the poor. The poor aren't going to go away. The poor you're going to always have with you. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it because you're acting out something that your body needs to know that cannot be put into words. And when you watch our country, America, I've said this before, but America has done so many great things in the world, and it radiates some unspeakable thing. It's not just liberty. It's a kind of decency. It's that thing about being a country with the soul of a church. It radiates that thing. And these guys have convinced themselves that somehow that violates their philosophy, so it must be bad. Friedrich Hayek, the famous economist who people are always ignoring because he was right about everything, he wrote The Road to Serfdom, and he said the most dangerous stage in the growth of civilization may be that stage in which man has come to regard all his beliefs as superstitions and refuses to accept or submit to anything which he does not rationally understand. And that's why they've rejected their religion, which is Christianity, our religion, and our traditions. And now they become the sort of people who are stuck in their philosophy and they can't even get off their butts to applaud for a suffering little boy whose dreams came true. An amazing thing. Reason, listen, I'm not knocking philosophy. I'm not knocking reason. But, G.K. Chesterton's famous line, the madman is not the man who has lost his reason. The madman is the man who has lost everything except his reason. And that's the left. And some people on the right, too, the anti-Semites and the people who are explaining to me why Andrew Tate, who's confessed to being a pimp and who's on camera beating people, is not really a bad guy because he hasn't been convicted in a court of law. Yeah, dude, wake up, live. The left has destroyed our traditions and our norms because they think they discovered what the Marxists think is the science of history, And now people who were born to be decent are doing stuff that's evil. And Trump says they're on one side of the line and America is on the other. And he's absolutely right. Many of you I know like to sleep when you go to bed at night, and I just consider that weak. I lie awake all night, and that's why I love my Helix mattress. You're missing it because if you're on a Helix mattress, you are going to fall asleep. You're going to be so comfortable you fall asleep, but you're going to miss how comfortable it is. I lay awake all night, and I can feel the comfort. And one thing I love about my Helix mattress is how well it does with temperature regulation, which really eases some of those annoying middle-of-the-night wake-ups. Plus, it's easy to connect to other wearable devices so you can actually see the data to back up your sleep improvements. What makes Helix different is they don't just sell you a random mattress. They match you with the perfect one for your body and sleep style, or in my case, my staying awake style. Whether you're you're a side sleeper, back sleeper, or somewhere in between, they've got you covered. And trust me, when you find the right match, you'll wonder how you ever slept on anything else. Right now is actually the perfect time to upgrade your sleep because Helix is having a March Madness sale. Go to helixsleep.com/Klavan to get 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/Klavan for 20% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/Klavan. How do you spell Klavan?
K-L-A-V-A-N, there are no E's in Klavan.
Chapter 2, That Way Madness Lies. You know, Donald Trump had a wonderful line once. I'm not going to play the clip because I don't have time, but he had a wonderful line where he said, never give up, never give up, never give up, but be flexible. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. You probably had this experience in your life where you're doing something that's not good for you. You're ruining your life. You're making your family unhappy. You're hurting people or something. Your business is not going well. Your health is going well. And you sit down and think, am I doing something wrong? No, I'm not. You think about it. No, I'm not, because you're thinking instead of experiencing. You're not living in the moment and reacting to it. And that's what the Democrats are doing. Everybody keeps saying, why can't they change? Why can't they change? Is because they're stuck in the snapshot. When you have this frozen idea of life, you can't be wrong. You cannot be wrong. You can't afford to be wrong because it puts you out of the picture, right? But the fact is, in flow, you don't die from being wrong. Every artist knows this because every artist makes a painting or writes a novel or something that's not as good as he wanted it to be. Every one of us. And you can try to blame other people, but ultimately you say, I got that wrong, and you find out, I didn't die from that. In fact, I became better. I became better from saying to people I was wrong. And think how rare it is to have anybody say, yeah, that was a mistake, because he's afraid that then he's frozen in that mistake forever. And you notice, by the way, that's cancel culture, right? You can apologize all you want, but it doesn't matter because you're frozen in that mistake forever, where people who are living, in flow are saying basically, you made a mistake. Now you'll be a better person. People like, say Jesus. So, just to take an example, that Zelensky thing, I was talking about that before Zelensky met with President Trump and Vance in the Oval Office. He met with anti-Trump Democrats, and they said to him that he should reject this peace deal, this mineral deal that Trump wanted. He went to Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, and Murphy tweeted, I just finished a meeting with President Zelensky here in Washington. He confirmed that the Ukrainian people will not support a fake peace agreement where Putin gets everything he wants, and there are no security arrangements for Ukraine. And that's what Zelensky went in and did. Why did the Democrats tell him to do what was obviously disastrous? Because their system has fallen apart. Their system is we lie and the press covers it up. We say the border is secure and the press says, Republicans pounce on someone crossing the border. This has worked for them for 30 years, more than that. So they lie and they cover it up, but things have changed. You hold up those little signs as protest signs. They don't understand that we're going to go on the internet and make funny memes out of those signs. They don't get it yet. They haven't caught up. They know the internet is there, but they think of it as an enemy because it is getting in the way of their system and in their stagnant belief. And they don't understand, for instance, COVID. Scott Atlas, the doctor who got COVID right, wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal talking about the fact that we haven't had a reckoning over COVID. He says the mismanagement of the pandemic hit us personally and exposed a massive across the board institutional failure. It was the most tragic breakdown of leadership and ethics that free societies have seen in our lifetimes. A lot of people can't accept that and say, we have to change. We were wrong. We were wrong. We were wrong on the way to being right. No, they can't say that. They have to say, well, it's all fine. Forget it. It never happened. We have Jake Tapper writing a book about how the press covered up Biden's, dementia when he was among the chief journalists to cover up Biden's dementia. You have guys on the right who used to be on the right who hate Trump so much, and they can't say, you know what? Trump is better than we thought he was. So you have Bill Kristol sending out tweets, stand with trans Americans. This is a guy who used to be a conservative, and now he's basically, totally on the left. This is the thing. They cannot get out of this. And, at this point, it's time to cover Trump, for journalists to cover Trump with a sense of flow, with a sense that he's moving outside of the moment. It's not that he shouldn't report the news. It's not that he always gets things right. But wait, see what happens. See what happens. I don't want him covered like in a hagiographic way where we make a saint out of him. He's a leader. He needs to be questioned. He needs to be challenged by the press. That's fine. Tariffs may be bad, but they might not. He's been right a lot of times about things that everyone said he was wrong about. China and all these different things that he said, that the the two-state solution. He's been right about these things when everybody said he was wrong. So maybe he deserves that we wait a little bit. Maybe Russia will get too much from a peace deal with Ukraine, but wait, maybe not. Maybe we'll benefit in the long run. It is nothing wrong with having an opinion, but a little humility and patience will make you a lot happier and will get you closer to the truth. I wish we could convince our journalists of that. So I know when you look at me and you see how incredibly in shape I am, you think you must be perfectly in tune with your metabolism. Like you must know exactly what your body is doing at any given moment. Well, not so much. I have found something that helps me understand what's going on with my metabolism. It is called Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach that measures your metabolism through your breath. And even I know how to give a simple breath into this device each morning. It lets you know what's happening with your metabolism and whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Plus, the companion app then provides you with a personalized nutrition plan for the day based on your measurements. Your metabolism is your body's engine, powering everything you do. When you optimize your metabolic health, you can experience improved energy levels, better fitness results, and enhanced sleep quality. Personally, I have found that understanding my metabolism really helps me transform my approach to health. It even adapts to your unique needs daily and adjusts recommendations to help maintain your metabolic health, energy, and even manage cravings. Take the next step to improving your health. Go to lumen.me/Klavan to get 20% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/KLAVAN. No E's in Klavan for 20% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Chapter 3, The Death of an Art Form. I want to talk about the Oscars because I know conservatives don't want to talk about the Oscars. I wrote a piece on the DailyWire and I got the usual comments that I've been getting for over 20 years when I talk to conservatives about movies and things. I don't care. I never watch the movies. I can stay home and watch Turner Classic Movies, and I don't watch those either because I never let my pure philosophy be stained by art, right? And I wrote this piece saying this was a screw you America Oscars, and these are films that no one watched about issues no one cares about. Because they've abandoned art, which is a representation of life to get you at that experiential level, not at a philosophical level. They've abandoned it for political propaganda. And that's why propaganda doesn't work, because propaganda stands still. Art is in motion like life. They're not making movies. They're taking snapshots. So you get a picture about a transgender musical. Like, who are you serving? What's the audience for that? Who cares? You make a 3.5 hour about brutalist architecture. Who are you serving? You're here to entertain. The winner was Honora, which is, you could say it's about the fact that a sex worker, a prostitute, really secretly desires a man who will cherish and protect her in marriage. That's kind of the point of the movie. But because the movie could not make that statement without first normalizing sex without humanity, the sex without humanity became more about justifying that and normalizing that than the actual ending of the movie, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it's just the way the picture was put together. And that's why you got Mikey Madison. These are the most talented people in the country. You will not replace these people with conservatives. You can only replace them with other artists who maybe believe in conservatism. That's different. That's a different thing. So she got up and this was her Oscar speech as she won the Oscar Cut 7.
I also just want to again recognize and honor the sex worker community. I will continue to support and be an ally. All of the incredible people, the women that I've had the privilege of meeting from that community has been one of the highlights of this entire incredible experience.
So I've met sex workers too, mostly in research, although, my early life notwithstanding, but, mostly researching that. And they're not, they may be wonderful people and they certainly bear the image of God, but they are really, really, really messed up people. That's why they're abusing themselves. But look, she's a dopey little actress. She's 25, which in actress years is 15. They're like dogs, but in reverse, right? They age very, very slowly. And she was right that was really the message of the picture, that maybe this is painful, that maybe this women want something more than this, but it's fine. It's fine. This is, you can get there from here. And that philosophy of dehumanizing sex is part of this materialist Marxist scientific view of history that's got to get these annoying homes and mothers out of the way in order to bring itself into reality. Even Wicked, The Wizard of Oz is a great movie about a girl growing up. Right? It's about a girl who has to choose between her good witch and her bad witch and ultimately become a woman who can confer upon men the gifts that women give to men, which are the gifts of intelligence and heart and courage. And if you think that's sexist, too bad. That's what the movie is about, because that's kind of what life is about. That's how life works. We live for one another. Who do you serve? Who do you serve in the movie? But Wicked turns that around and says, no, it's not about that. It's about racial prejudice. That's what the movie's about, right? I'm sure you've seen it, and that's obviously what it's about, because that's their philosophy. Everything has to be about racial prejudice. But art, when it works, when it's alive, when it's real, does something absolutely glorious, which is shows us people, maybe prostitutes. Dostoevsky wrote about prostitutes. There are good movies about prostitutes. Maybe people who have gender dysphoria. There's a wonderful movie about a transvestite, not a transsexual person, Ed Wood by Tim Burton. That's an excellent movie because it's alive. It's about real life. It's not about justifying his life. He looks really stupid in the movie when he dresses up in women's clothes. It's embarrassing even to watch it, but you see him as a real person. And when you see other people as real people, you get a God's eye view of them, because all of us are lost and all of us are sinful and none of us, not one of us, is righteous. And so we have no right to judge one another. And that's what art puts you in, that space, that godlike space where you can see people. But if it's only used for one group of people and not for others, that is where things go wrong. So, Hamilton, the musical, which is a good musical, good, solid musical. I hate rap music, and I liked it. I thought it was really good. They canceled their plan to perform it in D.C. at the Kennedy Center because Trump has thrown out the board of the Kennedy Center. And for now, at least, he's appointed himself head of the board. I don't know what that means. But the producer of the film, the lead producer named Steven Seller, said it became untenable for us to participate in an organization that had become so deeply politicized. The Kennedy Center is for all of us. And it pains me deeply that they took it over and changed that. They said it's not for all of us. It's just for Donald Trump and his crowd. So we made a decision. We can't do it. Now, that's an amazing statement, because let me ask Mr. Seller this. When has the Kennedy Center or any major Broadway theater or the movies in the last 20 years made a movie representing or put on a show representing the 50% of people in this country that voted for Donald Trump? It's really 75% who believe a lot of the common sense things Trump is saying, people who don't think transgenderism is a good thing, or maybe they're Christians who, even being loving, think that homosexuality is a sin per se, or maybe they think atheism is the wrong thing. When has a Trump person been able to go to a show on Broadway and feel he wasn't being told that he was a bad person? When has that ever happened? It wasn't for all of us. It was for you. It was for your small-minded philosophy. Because the thing is, I don't want the movies to be conservative. I don't want them to be leftist. I want people of all stripes to be able to make movies and to put on theater. And that's not true now. And if Trump makes it even closer to being true, it will mean that there will be shows that you go to that you're offended by, like we're offended by every single show you put on. Marxism has transformed these people into small-minded ideologues instead of actual artists. There was this wonderful moment where Kieran Culkin, he was in A Real Pain, which is a good little movie. It's a small movie. I'm not going to tell you it's a great epic, but it does everything right. It gets everything right. And I recommend it. You will like it. It's short. It's not 3.5 hours, where a 90-minute movie packed into 3.5 hours. And Kieran Culkin delivers a fantastic performance in it, just a really amazing performance. And he gets up and he gives this speech where he starts talking to his wife, Jazz, in the audience. This is cut 8.
About a year ago, I was on a stage like this, and I very stupidly publicly said that I want a third kid from her because she said if I won the award, she would give me the kid. It turns out she said that because she didn't think I was going to win. But and people came up to her and were like, really annoying her. I think it got to her. But anyway, after the show, we're walking through a parking lot. She's holding the Emmy. We're trying to find our car. Emily, you were there, so you're a witness. And she goes, "Oh God, I did say that. I guess I owe you a third kid." And I turned to her and I said, "Really, I want 4. And she turned to me, I swear to God this happened, it was just over a year ago. She said, "I will give you 4 when you win an Oscar."
Now, people were charmed by that because there are 2 things in the world that represent flow, that represent creation, and that is babies and art. There's a great song by Stephen Sondheim, Children and Art. And children and art are, in fact, the expression of the creator in the creation. That's what they are, and it's a wonderful thing. See, some conservatives are happy to see the movies die. They hate Hollywood. Hollywood has insulted us. All true, by the way. Hollywood has punched us, taken away our superheroes and turned them into spokesmen for, homosexuality, and they've taken away Disney and tried to queer our kids through cartoons. And they've done all those things because they've turned themselves into bad people. They've become bad people following their philosophy, stuck in the box of their philosophy, and they've become bad artists too. Their movies suck. Who goes to the movies? I very rarely go, and I always am looking to see a good movie. Now, they'll be replaced. Movies will be replaced. There'll be new technologies. Now will be able to make movies single-handedly almost with AI, and all this stuff is going to happen. But the movies were great. The movies were great. They owned the 20th century. They once spoke the American experience into the world and made the world better by doing that. And I'm going to talk about that next. The IRS is ramping up its enforcement efforts in 2025, and with April 15th approaching, time is running out. If you're facing back taxes or unfiled returns, delaying action only compounds the problem. Every day you wait makes your tax situation more difficult to resolve. Don't let another tax deadline pass you by. While taking immediate action is crucial, attempting to deal with the IRS alone can be a costly mistake. This is where Tax Network USA's expertise becomes invaluable. What sets them apart? Unlike other tax resolution firms, Tax Network USA maintains privileged access to the IRS through their preferred direct channels. This means they know exactly which agents can help resolve your case effectively. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, their team of attorneys and negotiators brings proven strategies to settle your tax issues favorably. With over $1 billion in tax debt already resolved, they have the experience and expertise to handle your situation. Talk with one of their strategists today. It's free. Stop the threatening letters, stop looking over your shoulder, and protect yourself from property seizures and bank levies. Don't let the IRS control your future. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Klavan. April 15th is just around the corner. Act now before the IRS acts first. How do you spell IRS? It's Klavan. Final chapter, Come Back Shane. So when I was a boy, I had an older brother, and like most younger brothers, I was a middle brother. I wanted to be him. I wanted to have everything that he had, and he was kind of the standard for what was good. And I loved him dearly. I love him dearly to this day. Though, of course, now we have to be individuals. But as a young boy, he was somebody I was modeling myself on. His favorite book and movie were Shane. He loved Shane. And so I just loved Shane. The novel, by the way, which I highly recommend. And if you have a son who is 12 or over, I would say, wonderful, wonderful. It's a wonderful Western. It is a great, great novel. Better than the movie, I think, though the movie is also very, very powerful and very famous. And the movie is about a gunman who's trying to reform, who rides into the valley where there is a range war. And the range war is that the people who are feeding cattle have come out to the West and taken over huge swaths of land. And the government has given people homesteaders, the Homestead Act, and they let people have these little homes, and they're farmers. And so the cattle people want to run the farmers off, and they've hired a gunman to terrorize them. And Shane rides into the valley and starts staying with this family, man, woman, and child, a farmer and his wife and their child, their little boy. And they start to realize that this is a man who can help them against the violence that the ranchers are bringing down on their head. And so this is the classic Western phenomenon. The Western, just like stories of knights in shining armor, is about that moment when masculinity can express itself through violence for the good. And if you watch great Westerns, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is maybe the best expression of this, is that after that period of time, that this guy who comes in and does the acts of violence that need to be done to start civilization, he's got to leave, because now it's time for farmer man, to start to build civilization. And Victor Davis Hanson, I said this before Victor, but he wrote a great book about it, so he wins. He wrote a wonderful book about Donald Trump, saying he's that man. He's that tragic man who has to come in and break things and be rough and be tough in order that we can get back to being a free civilization. Victor called him a tragic figure because we hate him for the things that have to be done. We want to deny the things that have to be done. And that's the story of Shane. He comes in, he's the guy who has the power to face down the bad gunmen for the good people, for civilization. But in doing so, he sacrifices his own salvation, right? He sacrifices himself to the people, because now he's a killer again. That's what he was trying to get away from. So in the movie, he is played by Alan Ladd. It's a wonderful movie. It's worth sitting down and watching because it's just so, first of all, the music is fantastically beautiful. The scenery is unbelievable, and many, many things about it are unique. So Alan Ladd, a famous tough guy actor, plays Shane, and Brandon DeWild, who made he's a little boy in this, but even when he grew up and was in HUD, he made a career out of being the young person who idolizes the dubious older person. And this was his first role doing that. And Brandon DeWild plays the little boy. And not just the little boy has to choose between which role model he's going to have. Is it going to be Shane, the violent man, or is it going to be his dad, who's also a manly guy, but he's a farmer and he lives in peace and he's married and, he listens to his wife and all this stuff. But not only does the little boy have to choose, but the wife has to choose. Who is she going to love? Is she going to love the bad boy forever, or is she going to turn to the future and civilization and stick with her husband and father? And Shane understands. He's in a final gunfight where he gets badly wounded, and he knows that now he's done his job. It's time for him to ride out of town. And here is the extraordinarily famous scene between Shane and I think they call him Joey in the movie. He has a different name in the book, but the scene where Joey realizes that his hero has to go away. It's cut 9.
We want you, Shane.
Joey, there's no living with a killing. There's no going back from one. Right and wrong, it's a brand. A brand sticks. There's no going back. Now you run on home to your mother and tell her everything's all right. And there aren't any more guns in the valley.
Shane, it's bloody. You're hurt.
I'm all right, Joey.
So once he becomes a killer, he is a killer. There's no going back from that. And he says, go tell your mother there are no more guns in the valley. And he rides away. And the famous moment is the little boy runs after him and says, Shane, come back, because nobody wants to let go of that golden moment of heroism and get into the much harder grinding business of building a civilization. And that line, as all movie lines, famous movie lines, get transformed into what we need them to be. That line became "Come Back, Shane." And the scene was so powerful that it became part of a generation's consciousness of who we are and who America was and what America did to settle the world. You can't have a world, whatever nobility you find in the lives of the Indians, the American Indians, that's all fine, but you can't have a world of people, a continent that belongs to people who never invented the wheel. Life is going to move on and civilization is going to come, and America pays tribute to itself in that beautiful thing, even though ugly things also happened. And so there was then, in the Clinton administration, there was a novel written by Joe Klein, but he wrote it anonymously because he didn't want to be exposed. He was a Democrat, and he wrote about a campaign worker, I think he worked on Bill Clinton's campaign, dealing with the fact that Bill Clinton was an abuser of women, a constant adulterer, and he dealt with that in a book called Primary Colors. And in the movie, there's a scene where the hero, who is this campaign worker who has been disillusioned, he's attached himself to the Clinton campaign, and he's been disillusioned, and he's lying in a motel room, and he's watching Shane, that famous scene on TV. And here's that moment, cut 10.
Come back, Shane.
run for president.
So he got his wish with Donald Trump. The tough guy comes back to town when the town has become lawless. And that's essentially what he's saying. Shane is so much a part of the American heart that when Bill Clinton exposed himself literally and figuratively as this abuser and this corrupt individual, the thought came in, come back, Shane. Now, this passed on into the only superhero movie that I ever thought was worth watching was Logan, which is by James Mangold, who also made A Complete Unknown. And Mangold wrote to me when I reviewed it, and I talked about it in my blog for PJ TV, and he wrote to me and thanked me for it because I knew I was the only person who understood what he was doing. And it's about Wolverine, and it's written kind of like a cross between a Western and a noir city thriller. And there's a relationship between those two, but I've talked about that elsewhere, and I don't have time to talk about it now. So it's basically partaking in all of the movies about violent men doing good in the world. And it's a movie about Wolverine and his daughter, I can't remember entirely what her relationship is, but he has a daughter figure in it. And in a motel room, again, they watch Shane. They watch that famous scene from Shane. And when Wolverine, spoiler alert, Wolverine dies at the end of Logan, they bury him. The little girl, his daughter, steps up to give his eulogy, and all she can think of is the end of Shane. This is cut 11.
A man has to be what he is, Joey. Can't break the mold. There's no living with the killing. There's no going back. Right or wrong, it's a brand that sticks. Now you run on home to your mother. You tell her everything's all right. There are no more guns in the valley.
There are no more guns in the valley. Go home to your mother because she's the builder of the home. She's the bringer of civilization, the mother. Go back and tell her there are no more guns in the valley. That the need for that kind of man is gone from here. And at the end of Logan, the orphaned mutant kids run off to build a new world, to build a civilization in a new place. And the cross on Wolverine's grave is knocked over and becomes an X for the X-Men. And what Mangold is telling you here, I mean, Shane is a Christ metaphor. The word Shane is like the name John. It means, I can't remember exactly, God is gracious or something like that. And he comes down into the valley, and that is, so he's coming down and he saves the people, but he dies doing it. He sacrifices himself in doing it, and then he goes back whence he came, into the Wild West whence he came. And so it's a Christ metaphor. And what Mangold is telling you is that metaphor, which is also a part of the human heart, that part that can't quite be put into words. It can't be frozen in philosophy. It can't be frozen in rules. It can only be told in parables. It can only be told in stories. It can only be told in the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It can only be told that way. So we can never quite name it. We only know that when we're being cruel, we only know that when we're being small, we only know that when we're being selfish, that we're not doing the thing we're supposed to do. When we're judging somebody else for being that way, we're not doing the thing that we're supposed to do. That's all we can really say. And that's why the rules of theology and the rules of your church don't always get you to the place you need to go. You've got to follow the Christ himself. And so what Mangold is saying is that metaphor becomes, that meaning is passed on through the Western, which was the great American art form during the height of the movie business, and even through some of the gangster noir movies, and now Mangold is saying through the superhero movie, where the superheroes represent God. And so that spirit, that living spirit that's beyond philosophy, never dies. And that's why Jesus is a storyteller, because he knows the rules don't do it, right? He knows that you can have all the rules in the world, but if you're stoning a woman, you got to stop. A lot of people are talking about autism, and Trump mentioned this, that autism now occurs so much more than it did, and RFK Jr. thinks maybe it's something we eat. Maybe it is, and I'm not a medical person. But, it's very possible that we're just training ourselves to think that way because we've become a mechanistic society, and we're training ourselves to think that way, and that's morphing the way our brain is, and then we're passing those brains on to our children. It's entirely possible that this is a way of thought as we abandon religion and we embrace scientism, that we're training our brains not to use the part that lives in flow, but the part that lives in every moment as if it were a snapshot, because that's the way engineers think. That's the way that scientists think. That's not the way artists think. And, the thing is, you can see this autistic way of thinking when people say, well, we know reality is out there, and we know the reality that we see is a creation, a collaboration of creation and our minds, right? That the rainbow that we see is something that only we see, but it's totally real. It's totally real. But people now think, well, that means that non-physical reality just comes from us. We're not seeing anything. Remember when I had Jonathan Haidt on and I asked him about morality. He said, well, morality is just a story that we tell. Yuval Harari says the same thing. It's a story we tell. And I kind of suggested to him as politely as I could that no, we actually are seeing a moral order. And yes, we're seeing it in human form like the rainbow. It's a human version of the moral order. It could be something different if we were different parts of creation, but it's a human version, but it's real. It is real, just like that spiritual reality. And that spiritual reality is part of creation, and we are part of creation, and we are the part of creation that creates. We create babies, and we create art, and we create inner lives, and we create the way we live, and the feelings that we have, and the experience that we have of life that flow. And, we keep asking, when will conservatives take back the culture? And the answer is never. We'll never take back the culture, and leftists will never be able to be in the culture without killing it. Artists run the culture. Artists will take over the culture. And until we let them do that, until we stop being philosophers and start to see the world a little bit like artists see it in flow, then we'll be able to re-enter the world of creation and be able to make things like babies, like art, and like the creator who made us. The Daily Wire continues to fight. This time we're taking on one of the woke left's greatest so-called accomplishments, and we're going to tear it down. Derek Chauvin was railroaded. The evidence is clear. His trial was a sham, driven by media pressure, political threats, and mob justice. Derek's federal conviction was a disgrace, a political sacrifice to appease the mob. If we're serious about undoing the damage of the last 4 years, this fight has to be fought. President Trump should pardon Derek Chauvin, and if he hears from enough of us, he might. We're leading the charge again and launching a full-scale push for justice. Go to pardonderek.com right now and sign the petition. We've delivered major political victories, but the fight isn't over. With your support, when we fight, we win. All right, Klavan Klapbacks.
Hey, what's that movie that Bogart made?
Which one?
The one where he played a cowboy. Only the one.
The Oklahoma Kid.
Shane? Oklahoma Kid. Shane. Yeah!
That's it. The Western becomes the gangster movie. It's absolutely true. All right. Klavan Klapbacks. It's Klavan Klapbacks at DailyWire.com. Klavan has a K. Klapbacks has a K. We spell it with a K. So it's Klavan Klapbacks at DailyWire.com. Ask us anything. Tell us anything. We love to get your letters, and we will read as many of them as we can on the air. From John, dear Mr. Klavan, I love your show and appreciate your many insights, but I'm flabbergasted by your failure of connoisseurment vis-a-vis Casablanca. Not only is it not the best movie of all time, Citizen Cain really is, it's not even a good movie of any time. Rather than Bogart's character, Rick, appearing manly, he sulks like a middle school boy getting over his first crush, so juvenile and emotionally incontinent he can't bear the playing of a song. Get over yourselves, Rick and Ilsa. Millions of people are dying in a world war, and we're supposed to be fascinated by two overgrown adolescents who had a fling last spring. Not a poser, John. John, listen, first of all, I want to just say that I'm proud to live in a country where a man with your view of life can walk around free as long as he's medicated and obviously supervised by an adult. You couldn't be any more wrong, of course. I think everybody realizes that. But, the one thing I will say is this is true about Casablanca, is that Rick does act like an adolescent. His girlfriend leaves him, and so he doesn't go to World War II. That's the story. And that had a big, big effect on me when I was a child. And I thought, he's not really a tough guy. It's just the Bogart playing him is romanticizing his pettiness. And if you watch a movie called The English Patient, it basically adopts that pettiness. I think it's one of the worst movies ever made. It won the Oscar. It's just a terrible, terrible film where basically, instead of at the end, Bogart's revelation that the problems of three little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world. It's basically, World War II doesn't matter because my heart is broken. And so you're right. People got the wrong message from it, but it's a great, great, great film because it delivers a better wisdom than that. But go ahead, live free until you have to be, obviously, sequestered. From Lorenzo, hello, Mr. Klavan. My question regards the implications of Jesus as the linchpin of Christian faith. For reference, I'm a young adult male engineer, former center leftist and ex-agnostic. A good friend helped me regain my sanity. I've now come to a general theism, mostly thanks to William Lane Craig's explanation of the cumulative cosmological, teleological, and axiological arguments. My impression from him, along with most other Christians, is that Christian theism is contingent on the historicity of the resurrection. If our best modern assessment of the resurrection's historicity is in terms of probabilistic likelihood, how can one make the jump from general theism to Christian theism? My newfound general theism is incredibly gratifying, but I feel myself yearning for a more personal God. Any tips? Thank you, Lorenzo. Now, I didn't make this letter up, but it speaks into the show we just finished, right? The key here is you are an engineer, and Elon Musk is an engineer, and engineers are lovely people, but they think in terms of taking things apart and putting them together, and that freezes you in a moment. That is the opposite of flow. Some things can't be taken apart and still be what they are, like a human being, like time. Time can't be taken apart. That's how you get these kind of paradoxes where you say, like, you know, how can a person ever get to the end of the room when he has to go halfway there, then he has to go halfway there, and he was always halfway there, and he never reaches the end. Space can't be taken apart. Life can't be taken apart, and that's why you need Christ. And so your engineering view, which helps you as an engineer, is getting in the way of your religious view, which is to immerse yourself, to let Christ fill up your heart, empty yourself, let Christ fill up your heart, and live in flow. You can't live in flow when you're working as an engineer. We all have to philosophize. We all have to think. We all have to solve problems. That's part of life. But you want to live there as you approach God and let God transform you in a living way. It's exactly an illustration of what we're talking about. All right, I got to go over to member block, which means those of you who are not members are about to be plunged into a darkness indescribable. Talk about flow. This is a darkness that never ends. It cannot be bisected. It can't be trisected. It can't be particleized. You will just enter this darkness. It is called Klavanlessness. You will not like it. So become a member today. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. If you are already a member, come to Member Block.